Corruption in the South African police service is believed to be common and widespread. In the past year, we've broadcast several stories showing police taking bribes or extorting money. Special Assignment regularly gets calls from the public who complain about corrupt police members or police stations. We set out to find out what has gone wrong and what is being done about it. A year ago, Special Assignment exposed crooked cops in Rosebank, Johannesburg.
I can drop 600. That's my limit.
The police were taking bribes from clients of sex workers. They would then let them go without laying charges.
I will have to give you a small change.
A few months later, we reported that police were also on the take in Port Elizabeth.
Foreigners say getting documents to stay in the country isn't a problem if you have money. An illegal immigrant carrying our spy camera paid a policeman and was issued with an affidavit. It said he was a lawful refugee who'd lost his passport.
2 weeks ago, we showed the Boyson's police extorting money from foreigners.
And gave him the money, 300 rands, with the hope that Jordan will not be deported.
When Special Assignment aired a program demonstrating clearly and unequivocally the police corruption in the on Oxford Street, in the policing of sex workers, I made it very clear at that time that nothing less than an effective prosecution will be satisfactory.
But what action did the police take after the cop prostitute expose?
The current position with in the Rosebank matter is that those cases were withdrawn and sometime in July. But the police and the prosecuting authorities have not thereby taken a decision that those matters have been concluded. But in the absence of statements by those who were responsible for compiling the footage, it is virtually impossible to secure conviction.
The police also started an internal investigation into the Rosebank affair. Those involved were suspended without benefits, but it seems little else was done. 2 weeks ago, just after our recent Boyson story, they called our office. They needed to contact the Rosebank sex workers, they said, to get them to testify. This comes almost a full year after our story shocked the nation. But what of police claims that they need the media's help to prosecute?
I think it's dangerous for any system, including the police services, to actually use the media as an extension arm in its investigation.
The sex workers tell us they are still harassed. In the past, the police have come up with a standard response. When the media reports on incidents of corruption, it's a few bad apples that taint the image of the entire service, they say. And that's often where the matter seems to stop. What's missing is decisive action. But there's nothing new about police on the take.
The history of apartheid and policing certainly is a large contributory factor to a corruption problem that the South African Police Service faces. A lot of people join the police in apartheid, not because they wanted to necessarily help their community or fight crime, but for many, many people it was just a job.
This comes from way back. Many years ago when I started in the police, by mainly taking a coal rink for overlooking people playing Fafi in the street, which was illegal at that stage for one of the bylaws, municipal bylaws, that was corruption. We never saw it that way, but that's where it starts. Starts with something small, starts with a coal rink. Tomorrow it's 10 rand, then 50, then 5,000. Then there's hijackers involved, then there's a rape victim or suspect involved. So it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Over the years, the perception has grown that the police are the most corrupt branch of the civil service.
I don't think there's a police agency in the world that doesn't have some degree of police corruption. What differs between police agencies is not whether they have corruption or not. It's the extent of the corruption problem that they are facing.
When we return, what causes corruption? In 1994, the old SAP gave way to the new South African Police Service. Of its 140,000 members at the time, 20,000 had criminal records. It came as no surprise then that almost 15,000 criminal cases were opened against police members in the year 2000 alone. Paul Meyer left the service 4 years ago to join a private security company.
Best time to hijack cars is in the rainy weather.
After 14 years with the police, he, like many others, was attracted to this high-growth industry and offers of better pay.
My main objective was looking after the community, serving them with pride, clamping down on crime, doing crime prevention. That was my main objectives, and I think nowadays when people enlist in the police service, they must have the same objectives.
No one joins the service to make money through corruption, but studies show that a staggering 6% of South Africans have given bribes to cops. Clearly, there's a lot of cash on offer. Gareth Newham is a researcher at the Center for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. He's done a lot of work on policing and training. He understands how corruption starts.
Well, that impression comes from surveys in which representative samples of South Africans have been asked who they think is the most corrupt department, and more of them have said the police than any other department. That's not too surprising because the police are very public, very visible face of government. They're out in the streets every day, they're in all communities.
They come across situations where they cannot refuse additional money or services, whatever the case may be. So the opportunity exists every day for them.
Police officers usually get tempted when they interact with criminals. You look at lives of criminals and lives of police officers in terms of accumulation, and you realize that these criminals they accumulate so fast and for doing nothing.
Morning, Amos. How are you? I was offered 20,000 rand for not arresting one of the syndicate's leaders' sons after he stole a vehicle. And if I had to take that money for closing my eyes on that crime, I think it would have gone worse, maybe take more money or whatever. Luckily, I'm of that personality, and I was one of those policemen that could say no. But unfortunately, that money went to somewhere else where they used to utilize it to get that guy out of court.
The salaries, this is bad. This is so bad that it needs urgent intervention. The salaries of police officials are appalling.
A new constable earns between 2,000 and 3,000 rands a month. So would paying our police more do the trick? Would it rid the SAPS of corruption?
Money alone will not help us if we do not also address socio-economic causes of crime. If those are not tackled, we'll sit with the problem. You will still give people money and find corrupt officials.
They have tried to use increasing salaries in other countries to improve corruption, but as a strategy on its own, it hasn't worked. If you want to use an increase in salaries to deal with corruption, you also have to then say that there's a compromise on the part of the officers. When they give salary increases to police officers, they need to also then say to them, but we're going to become extra hard on those that we do find in getting involved in corruption. We'll proactively investigate people. We'll look for hotspots where we get information or complaints of police corruption. You will expect absolutely no mercy if we catch you.
Clients, are they happy? You can pay any servant any amount of money, but if the opportunities exist, they will still take money, definitely.
You find people with extremely high salaries who are also involved in corruption. And where do you elevate the salary to reduce that risk?
As long as there's a chance that they're not going to get caught, or a large chance they're not going to get caught, and they see other police officers getting away with it, that kind of ethos that it's okay in certain circumstances starts to emerge. About 4 decades of research on this topic internationally have shown that the number of organizational, occupational, and environmental factors that will start piling up on individual police officers unless they have quite a strong and clear moral code, quite a clear sense of why they're police officers, and they maintain that, and they're supported by the organizations. There's a danger that quite a significant number will start looking at ways of making money for themselves or improving their material conditions using police powers.
There are situations where people find themselves disillusioned, low salaries, lack of resources, limited career prospects. Conditions are so unconducive that such as many people, end up, losing hope within the police.
Added to this, some easy targets, among them the many vulnerable immigrant communities, a ready source of cash for police who are out to make a quick buck.
The targets that the police will focus on specifically are people who are in trouble with the law. That is, somebody who's already been arrested and facing criminal charges. That person is now under pressure and will quite likely pay money in order to have those charges go away, or to ensure the evidence doesn't reach court so they don't go to jail. So very often people who are in a vulnerable position like that.
Specifically where it comes to risk areas, dealing with narcotics, dealing with prostitution, dealing with illegal immigrants, anyone who is in a position where they need to or would be willing to pay a bribe or to corrupt a police officer.
Those are the high-risk areas, but the SAPS knows that's not where it stops. Some serious gatekeeping needs to take place. After the break, what's being done about this? It's not true to say that the South African Police Service does nothing to keep their members honest. These are some of their new recruits. They are being trained in new ways in order to clean up the service.
It would be quite frank and better if we can bring all the old police officers and try to workshop them on the side of corruption, so that we can be able to have that trust back to the police by the community themselves.
The new police leadership knew as far back as 1995 that the corruption in the service was rampant. You only had to look at the caseload of the now defunct anti-corruption unit. Sending more than 100,000 police members back for training might be ideal, but it's just not practical. The only realistic approach is to start with the new intake. The hope is to infuse a sense of pride and discipline in the recruits so that they can help turn the tide of crime and corruption. This young constable recently graduated from police college.
Crew 215080.
Constable D.D. Masimula has every intention of serving his country honorably. Whether he does so depends on a number of factors. He needs an environment that encourages him to remain honest and ordinary citizens who don't resort to bribery.
I had a problem with my mom and say, you want to join the police, you are a red flag, why are you going to the police? say, no, man, I must help.
I think there's an opportunity in the police service for a certain kind of group loyalty. Because you are part of a division, you have a certain loyalty to the organization. And I think it's quite difficult for someone who is in that position to blow the whistle on his colleagues in the organization.
They must recruit their people more carefully, more selectively, do a proper survey on their personal life, previous life, even if it has to do with polygraph, criminal checks, and get only the top quality policemen and women out there and put them in the service.
There's a saying in ethics management that you have to watch the doors of your organization. Where do people come into my organization? So I would say a lot more energy spent on vetting of individuals, integrity testing, interview procedures that try and get a sense of the ethical character of the individuals that join the police service.
You've got to create a situation in a police service where the biggest threat to a corrupt officer is an honest officer, because they will report them.
Being corrupt is inner self. If you are disciplined, I don't think you'll be involved in corruption, because you are taught and with a very high discipline procedures, and then if you are corrupt, you will be charged.
But it becomes very difficult for a new recruit who might move into a police station as their first posting and immediately come across people who are already involved in corruption, who might actually tell them it's okay, they won't get caught, they can make extra money, and start encouraging them to be involved.
They are enjoying themselves.
In today's police environment, the SAPS not only has to fight crime, it has to keep a check on its own members. The new curriculum plays a role in steering recruits away from corruption. And for the first time, the South African police have in recent years become proactive in filling their ranks.
We have professional recruiting officers who went out to recruit the best candidates, who will come and make sure that they fulfill the objectives, the vision and the mission of the South African Police Service.
If you are in the SAPS looking to be rich, then you chose the wrong career. I don't think it's a good idea to come to the SAPS thinking one day you'll end up rich. No.
Since we had this new police training environment, there isn't a single one of our students recently from this SAPS Training Provision Institute of Pretoria that was involved in a corruption.
To fight corruption, it's not good enough just to wait until you have evidence against a corrupt individual, arrest them, prosecute them, take them out of the police agency, because some of the kind of key factors that might be driving corruption won't change. In other words, if police officers are getting into financial problems and that is driving some of them into corrupt practices, arresting those police officers is not going to stop other police officers from getting involved in financial problems.
There are a lot in the curriculum, teaching about how to be money-wise, how to not be a soft target, all those stuff.
It will take some time to see the results of the new approach. The public are justifiably angry, but then they are not entirely blameless either.
The public is always up in arms about police corruption. One constantly hears stories about people who have been so taken aback by how easy it was to bribe a traffic official, for instance. But the person that makes that comment is the one who actually bribed the traffic official.
The South African police are under siege. They are in a desperate fight to gain the trust of the public and keep it. It will take creativity on the part of their leaders and a determination to deal with corruption.
Searching for the correct. Thank you very much. You must have a nice day.
The way they've dealt with some cases of corruption in the past does not always inspire confidence, either in their ability or their will to turn the tide.
You need to set up your complaint systems at every police station, so that, or a complaint system, not necessarily at the police station, but maybe at a higher level, where you analyze and monitor all the complaints that are coming into the police. You don't treat each complaint just as an individual complaint that you have to address and then it's over. You start looking for trends and patterns. You differentiate between service delivery complaints and abuse of power complaints, brutality or corruption. And when you start finding that certain complaints keep emerging from certain units or certain police stations or certain times of day, you then do a proactive surveillance investigation where you get your intelligence people in.
We've had some interesting recommendations with people talking about corruption prevention, that maybe we need something similar to a truth and reconciliation process in corruption where people can come clean. And sort of that creates a clean slate for everyone to move forward from, and where people can take back their credibility and say, okay, I was involved in that, but I'm not involved in that any longer.
Like it or not, these young men and women are our hope for the future. It is on them and their leaders that our claims to a safe and secure environment rest.
Walk on the hill. Step. Stomach in. Lock your elbows. Cut two. Oh, one. On the hill. On the hill. Sandre. On the top.